Welcome back. The title of this mini lecture is The Late Middle Ages. Let's get into it. All right. So, the point of this particular discussion is to kind of weave, some general themes to keep in mind as we're getting into an understanding of Europe in the 16 and 1700s. Europe from about 1300 to about 1500, of course, has a number of themes that it's taking into consideration. And the first, of course, is going to be the demographic changes and transformations that had really happened since the year 1000 in Europe. So from 1000 to about 1300, Europe, oh, it goes through quite a lot. And a big part of that is going to be these demographic changes. So it's nearly going to double in size during this period. It's going to transform in terms of political structures. It's going to transform in terms of social classes and how many individuals engaged from rural to new urban spaces that were developing within that period. So that's the first thing, right? So the second is going to be the Black Death. So public health outbreaks or conflicts or difficulties weren't new to people living in Europe. However, the 1340s and into the early 1350s was a time period in which the bubonic plague hits Europe and is really destructive to populations across the region. Figures vary in terms of the number of individuals who would die after being exposed to the plague. But some evidence suggests that in some parts of Europe, it's a third of the population, it's a half of the population. But Europe is, a space of about 75 million people in this period. So certain parts of European society shut down. You're going to see transformations again in terms of class and in political relationships. So questions about serfdom and peasantry and the role of the state, all of these kinds of things are going to be a part of this, as well as, of course, issues of health, of religion, really any number. And again, this is mid 1340s into 1350s. This is the period that we would be talking about. So the next term for us is the 100 Years' War. All right, the 100 Years' War. So this is a conflict that begins in the 1330s and is really going to go until about the 1450s. So that's longer than 100 years. But what the 100 Years' War really dealt with is this back and forth ongoing series of conflicts between England and now France, and has to do kind of with the formation of the French state within that particular period. It is a period in which you're going to see the transformation in terms of how European states are fighting. So you're going to see kind of the role of knights. Certainly, you're going to see the role of archers, and the role of longbows are going to be a part of this. But you're also going to see, of course, large-scale sieges, raiding operations, which take place in France, and also the role of figures like Joan of Arc are certainly going to be central during this period as well. Now, the French state that grows out of this will kind of take us into, kind of early modern Europe. But it's important to note the 100 Years' War. Another term for us is simply a date. It's 1492. So by the time you get to the end of the 15th century, right, the end of the 1400s, you're going to see the beginnings of what becomes known as the Atlantic world. And you're going to see really the creation of a newly global era beginning here. You'd had efforts on the part of the Portuguese and others to develop trading relationships across parts of the continent of Africa. But the Spanish efforts, particularly with Columbus beginning in 1492 and his arrival in what will become known as the Americas, will begin a process where, though, of course, Columbus believed to his dying day that he'd found India and that he was on the outskirts of India, begins this new Atlantic world that Europeans and others are going to, be engaging with for, of course, decades to come. The last term for us is state centralization. So a part of the process of thinking about the period between 1300 and 1500 is that by the time you get to the end of the 1400s, European countries are going to start to think about how to kind of center and centralize their states. And a lot of factors are going to be at work in that. Part of it has to do with tax legislation and bureaucracies and sort of that kind of process. And that will take time. Thank you very much.